Holmes, case number 12 CR 1522. The records will reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys and the prosecutors are present as well. We are outside the presence of the jury. My staff received a note from Juror 901. This is a follow-up to the discussion that I had with her outside the presence of the other jurors yesterday. The note reads as follows: in regards to the lady that spoke to me, Juror number 901, Monday, I think she's in the second row, first seat on the aisle, behind the defense team, but I'm not completely positive. I try not to make eye contact when she was speaking to me. She has gray/black hair, wears dark framed glasses. So I'm reading the note because it was provided to my staff. And the person is saying it's not her. We did have someone yesterday who I think admitted to having the conversation with this juror and indicated that it was inadvertent. And I don't have any reason to disbelieve that. And I wasn't intending to address this any further today. I'm just reading it because a note was provided, okay? All right, are the parties ready for the jury?
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, let's bring the jury in, please.
Judge, as they're coming in, would it be appropriate for the court to somehow inform that juror that the issue has been resolved or that there's no outstanding problems?
That's fine. I will. Do you mind if I do it in front of the other jurors, or do you want me to do it with her alone?
I would prefer if you didn't do it in front of the other jurors, and you could inform her, I think, that it wasn't a person that was associated or affiliated with either of the parties.
Okay, I think that's fair. Sheriff, could you let them know that we need to talk to number 901 alone briefly, please? Thank you. The record should reflect that juror number 901 is now present in the courtroom outside the presence of the other jurors. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
All right. I just brought you in to follow up on our conversation yesterday on the note you wrote to us. We have identified the person who spoke to you yesterday. At least we think we did.
Okay.
And we've taken care of it. There's no problem, and it was inadvertent. That person did not realize that you
That's
were
what I figured.
Yeah. So, and that person is not affiliated with either party. So I wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay. You still did the right thing by letting us know.
Good. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the record should reflect that juror number 901 has now exited the courtroom. Now, are you ready for the jury?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, let's bring him in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Welcome back, folks. By the way, I know I don't do this enough, but I'm grateful that you're always on time, regardless of whether it's just a break or an end of the day break. You show up on time, and I very much appreciate that. There are a lot of you here, 24 of you, and it's not easy to have everyone show up on time, and all of you have always been on time, and all of you have found a way to coexist during the breaks. I know that's not easy either, and I appreciate all your efforts in doing whatever you can to be here on time and to get along. Thank you. All right, Mr. Brockler, do you want to finish publishing Exhibit P-TR-1007? All right, you may proceed. And I will dim the lights again.
She's a friend.
Okay, tell me about Charlotte. I don't recall her from...
She's in computer sciences program. She hosted a party for Gargie's birthday.
Was she a close friend of yours or one of the group or no?
She's a friend now. I don't know how close it was.
Did you ever date her or
No.
hang out with her or do things alone with her?
No, nothing like that.
Okay. All right. Know her last name?
It's not coming to mind.
Okay, that's it. You've told me about friends. What are they going to tell me about when I talk with them? What are they going to say about you when I talk with them?
Well, that depends on what you're going to ask.
What kinds of things are they going to say about James Holmes?
He's smart, good student, friendly. That's about it.
Do you think they'll say that they thought something bad was coming, or that they thought the mission was coming, or anything like that?
No, I never talked to them about the mission or anything.
Do you think their views of you have changed because of the mission or since the mission?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, now we don't associate with each other anymore.
What do you think their feelings are that, as a result of the mission?
I don't think it's affected them.
You don't think it's affected their feelings about you?
I'm not sure.
Logically speaking, how do you think it has affected their feelings about you?
They're probably sympathetic.
So far as you know, have any of them tried to write you?
Nope.
Even if you haven't gotten them or something? Any particular reason you think they haven't tried to write you?
Because I broke off the association before doing the shooting.
But as we said yesterday, people who don't even know you have written to you.
Right.
And something very significant in your lives and the lives of others happened. And you said that they would be sympathetic, yet they haven't written.
They can feel sympathetic on the inside without having to externalize it.
How about wanting to externalize it, wanting to write to you?
I think they're probably holding me back.
Why might they hold back?
Because they don't want to continue on with the friendship. They're going on about their own lives.
Most people have lots of friendships, even though they go on about their lives, lots of past friendships.
Right.
That doesn't keep them from communicating a little bit.
Well, I don't know why they haven't communicated then.
We talked about your friends. Talk about your enemies. Got any enemies?
No.
Before this happened, before the shooting,
I didn't have any enemies.
as a kid, as an adolescent, a teenager,
No.
no enemies?
No.
Is that just coincidental, or are you a real nice guy, or
I don't know about real nice.
people? Didn't matter enough to people to be their enemy?
No, I'm just a nice guy.
Okay. Some of the things that folks noticed on your computer were some of the other places that you've been, some investing sites, for example. E-Trade,
E-Trade.
Motley Fool.
Yeah.
Tell me about that part of your activity.
Well, I have a Roth IRA on E-Trade. I was saving up for retirement pretty early on.
Interesting. When did you start the Roth IRA?
I think in high school, but I'm not sure.
That early?
It might have been college. I don't know.
Do you recall about the last time you contributed to it?
I think I put $5,000 into it in 2012 or end of 2011.
You know roughly how much was in it as of July of 2012?
Around 10 to 15,000, I think.
And you put 5 in it, give or take, end of 2011 and early 2012? Do I understand that?
That's what I think. I have to check the records of the transactions.
But that's why you run E-Trade, was because that's where the Roth is.
Yes.
What instruments? And does it still exist as far as you know?
I believe so.
Excuse me. What instruments was the money in? What kinds of instruments?
In stocks.
Just straight equities, stocks and bonds, or stocks or funds, or what?
Just stocks.
Do you remember any particular ones that you invested in? Excuse me, that you invested in?
Coca-Cola.
Okay. I don't remember from the record, I guess it's in the record, but I don't remember when the last time you checked on them was, or how often you checked on them, say during 2012.
I don't remember either.
Would you have checked on them a few times during 2012?
Maybe early on.
Excuse me. And Motley Fool? How about Motley Fool?
I don't know what Motley Fool is.
And actually, my inference about something, probably something that said fool, but it reminded me of an investment site called Motley Fool.
Okay. I've never been there.
Okay. It's kind of an informal, friendly advice on the radio and on the web and stuff. Okay. Any other investing sites that you liked to go to?
Wall Street Journal, just to check out stocks.
How often would you do that, say, in 2012?
Rarely.
Rare. There's an indication that you were looking at real estate or looking into real estate at some point. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, if I was going to stay on the graduate program, I wanted to get a house there.
Did there come a point when you stopped looking at real estate or being interested in the real estate?
Well, near towards leaving graduate school.
Okay. So, June, July, and I just don't know the dates of this. I can look them up, I suppose. But June, July, as far as you recall,
Yeah. Sounds fair.
that you were or were not interested in the real
That I'd stop looking at the real estate.
Okay. Excuse me. We talked about the video games. Any particular kind of websites or books or magazines that you enjoyed in 2012 before the shootings?
Netflix, Hulu, Fancast.
And you talked about the kinds of movies. I think you liked comedies.
Comedies are my favorite.
Okay. Any other particular kinds that you used to download a lot or check out a lot?
Drama movies, adventure.
I don't suppose Highlander was anywhere in there.
It was a fantasy movie.
Did you?
I thought it was a good movie.
I did too, by the way. And when was the last time you looked at a Highlander movie?
Oh, I only did it once, I think.
Do you remember about when?
No, I don't remember when. I watched like hundreds of movies.
One way or another, do you think you may have looked at a Highlander movie in the last, or in April, May, June, July of 2012?
I couldn't tell you
Leading
if
up
I
to-
did.
Okay. There would have been older movies by then, because they came out in the 90s and the 80s.
I don't know.
Did you have many books in your apartment? Besides textbooks?
Like one or two books. One on like,
Excuse me.
one called Starfish, which is like science fiction, war.
Starfish?
Starfist.
Starfist. Okay. What other books do you recall having in the apartment besides textbooks?
That's about it.
Any books on strategy, on war, on warriors, on mission?
No, I just looked online for that kind of thing.
Okay. And what did you find online?
Like how much ammunition was used, like types of strategies and tactics.
I take what I hear.
Types of strategies and tactics.
Any particular websites that you recall that stood out, that were particularly useful
No,
or interesting? Somewhere I had a note wondering, for some reason, about books on reality, like the physics of reality, the quantum physics of reality. Does that ring a bell at all?
I many books on them.
Look that up online or any other. Does that ring a bell at all? Maybe not.
Physics of reality doesn't.
I'm thinking of, for some reason, I'm not sure why it came to me, quantum physics and that causing a new way of looking at what reality is.
No, that doesn't
You may
ring.
have been reminded of that by something in your notebook.
No, I know that.
Things like, well, one that comes to mind is the Dancing Wu Li Masters. Does that ring a bell?
Dancing what masters?
Dancing Wu, W-U-Li-L-I, Masters.
I haven't heard of that before.
Okay, that's fine. I was going to ask you about, among the movies, a movie called Inception. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, that was also by Christopher Nolan. He did the Batman movies as well.
I didn't realize it was the same guy.
Yeah.
Okay. What was Inception about?
It's about planting an idea into the brain and like you kind of in a dream state kind of thing.
In what context is the idea being implanted in somebody's brain?
Well, Leonardo DiCaprio, the main guy, wanted to see his kids at the end, but he couldn't because there was like a block on him or something. I don't know. It's a hard movie to explain. It's like explaining the Matrix or something. Okay.
I never did quite get the Matrix, much less the follow-up movies to the Matrix. But was there ever a thought or a fantasy or feeling for you that somehow thoughts were being put into your brain?
No, I don't believe so.
Was there ever a feeling that somehow your thoughts could get out and other people could hear them or see them or be aware of your thoughts?
During the delirious bedfall incident.
As far as you recall, any time before that?
No,
Or before the shootings, for example, or after the just after the shootings?
no.
Okay. Did you ever have the experience of seeing something on TV, hearing something on the radio, something like that, and getting the feeling that they were referring to you?
Again, during the kind of just before the bedfall incident.
Before, okay. But, I'm sorry,
Just before.
just before the bed falling?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I would like see the president on TV and he would give a certain like look and I thought he was like agreeing with me or something.
Looking back, what's your thought about that?
That's ridiculous.
Did you ever have that feeling or that experience before the shootings?
Not that I know of.
Or just after the shootings that you recall?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I remember just after the shootings, remember the jail video, sometimes you'd go into the TV room for a little bit and watch some TV.
Yeah.
What would you be watching most of the time? Do you remember?
Sitcoms.
Sitcoms? Watch the news much?
No, I don't care for the news.
What about the news about you?
It would pop up, but I wouldn't like go to a news channel and watch it.
If it popped up, would you continue to watch it as opposed to changing the channel?
Yeah, I would continue with the program I was watching.
So if the news popped up, you'd go ahead and not bother to change the channel and you'd listen to it.
Right.
Okay. There was something on your phone think it was in July of 2012, about the New York Times and the Denver Post. Do you remember any of that?
I remember going to the New York Times and looking into how you can post an opinion on the New York Times website.
In anticipation of what?
In case I wanted to post. I didn't end up posting anything.
Did you think you might sometime?
Yeah, that's why I looked at it.
Okay. What might you have posted?
The pictures from the pictures. The photographs of me in contact lenses and armor and stuff.
How do you think that would have been received by the New York Times and the New York Times readers?
They would repost it.
And what would people see in those pictures? What would it convey to people?
That this guy's different than other people.
In what way different?
He doesn't look the same as a normal person.
In what way does he not look the same?
Well, he's got red hair and black contacts and
what would that mean to the people looking at it?
well, that would depend on what they wrote.
What would they be likely to infer from it?
I didn't think about that back then.
Sure you did. Otherwise, why would you put the pictures up?
I didn't post the pictures.
Oh, okay, you're correct. Otherwise, why would you be thinking of putting the pictures up?
Now I'm confused.
In thinking of putting the pictures up, what would you be communicating to people?
Just that I was different again.
Different in what way?
Mentally different. A different kind of view of the world than other people.
Such as what?
That you can increase your value by killing people.
Is that what the pictures, is that what you would be communicating with the pictures? How would people realize from seeing that picture?
There's no way they would realize that.
And maybe that brings us to the question of, was that a logical thing to think about or not a logical thing to think about as you look back on it?
Illogical looking back.
At the time, although you didn't do it, did you think it was a logical thing to do or decide it wasn't a logical thing to do?
I thought it was logical.
Okay. Same for the Denver Post or different?
I never did anything with the Denver Post.
Somehow DenverPost.com was on there. I'm not sure why or how.
What's there?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't recall. Did you ever write a letter to the editor or an op-ed to a newspaper before?
No.
You asked Dr. Fenton about her philosophy of life.
She was evasive.
She was evasive.
Yeah.
You think you were evasive?
Yes.
Any particular reason you asked her about her philosophy of life?
If I could help it build and improve my own.
I'm sorry?
I want to know hers so I could improve my own philosophy of life.
How would that have helped you improve your own philosophy of life?
philosophy with.
I think, if I'm remembering right, I got the impression that she was asking you a lot of questions about your philosophy. And it was a sort of a retort that she should tell you about hers. Am I misremembering that?
No, that sounds accurate.
And a retort is often intended to make somebody stop asking.
Right.
Does that apply to that situation or no? Does it apply to Dr. Fenton or no? Do you want her to stop asking?
I don't remember.
What do you think, Dr. Fenton or Dr. Feinstein will tell me when I talk with them about you?
That there was a lot they didn't know about me.
What else do you think they'll tell me?
That they'd taken me very seriously. They'd even called the Big Deal Threat Response Team or something.
And how did you know that they called the threat response team?
My lawyers told me.
Okay. What else would they tell me about you?
Soft-spoken, quiet.
Before the shootings, let's say in the months before the shootings, what kinds of things brought you pleasure?
Video games, TV.
We've talked about those. Anything else particularly pleasurable or things that just made you feel great?
No.
How about things that made you feel okay, brought you contentment?
Food, I guess.
Maybe brought you solace?
I'm not sure.
Anything bring you hope? You said you're depressed a lot. Depressed people often are kind of hopeless.
Just the mission brought me home.
Do you know what your family's doing right now?
My dad's retired and my mom's working as a nurse.
Why don't we stop for lunch? And when we come back, I want to ask you more about the mission.
Okay.
About the mission, okay?
All right.
Did you want to take this with you, or?
No, it's just lying around.
Okay, that's fine. I think we're going to stop for lunch, guys, and probably start up about 2, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to turn the lights on. All right, the record should reflect that the people just finished publishing P-TR-1007. Was that the end of that disc?
Yes, sir.
All right. And at this time, Dr. Reed is resuming the witness stand, and I remind you, sir, that you're still under oath. I remind the jury that Dr. Reed's testimony has been admitted only for a limited purpose. You may consider the testimony of Dr. Reed only as to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider this testimony for any other purpose. All right, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Your Honor, may I make a brief record? Right when we came back from the break, the court may recall that I leaned over to Mr. King, and then we fast-forwarded through a portion of that video that would have represented the lavatory break that was taken on the video. I spoke with Mr. King at first. He'd indicated he had no objection to fast-forwarding through those few minutes, and I wanted to put that on the record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Doctor, there's several areas I want to go into with you here. This was a bit of a longer segment. First thing I want to talk to you about is you go through almost page by page the notebook, at least up until the planning of the scouting out of the theater portions. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Why was it important to your assessment of the defendant and his capacity in this case to go into that kind of detail with the notebook with him?
Those were things that he wrote himself, his own productions, within the last month or two prior to the shootings. They represented something about how he was thinking. I'm not sure exactly what in the various parts, and we can talk about that, but they were just as if he had talked with somebody in the last few weeks. I would want to talk with that person. It was information that was there.
Is it information because of the form it took and the timing that it took that you just simply took at face value, or, as completely unimpeachable information, or was it a place to start a conversation, or something else?
I think a little of the latter and something else. I don't take what's in the notebook as absolutely true or absolutely representative of what he was thinking at the time he wrote the various things. But it's a place to start. It's something to ask him about. And he certainly wrote them down for some reason, and we talked about what those reasons might have been. Some things appear to have been quite the way he wanted to write them down. I'm not saying that very well. Some things appeared to have been intended to be interpreted in one way. Other things perhaps intended to be interpreted in other ways. I'm not saying that very well either. There are different parts of the notebook, some that have to do with concerns he has about how he is feeling, what he's perceiving. That's important. There are parts that have to do apparently with what he was planning and his thoughts about that planning. And there are thoughts that have to do apparently with his merely reporting what's going on. It was important to me that it appeared to be dedicated to his family, who he mentioned by name. There were a lot of contexts, not just one, and some of them seemed more important than others.
Well, tell me about the significance you just talked about placing on the fact that it's dedicated or written to his family.
At least the first page, and we might recall that the first page in the notebook is actually about the 27th page of that composition book. The other pages were torn out. We don't know what was on those. I'm not saying there's anything suspicious about that at all, but it starts on page 27 of that particular notebook. The first page says to Goober, that's his mom, Chrissy or Chris, and Bobo, that's his father, love yous, Y-U-H-S. I don't know how that applies to the following pages. All I know is that that page was there, and anything else would be sort of speculation on my part.
You talked about him going through a list of things that he was concerned about with himself, and I just want to touch on a few of them. We've already talked about the suggestion that he felt like he may have been catatonic and not meeting that definition. I want to ask you about his use of the term paranoia, or his discussion of the feeling of that. Talk to us about that.
Okay. And that's in a context, I'd like to put it in context if I may, in a context of lots of things that he wrote down about concerns he had about himself. Some of them sounded logical or semi-logical, others didn't sound logical. Some were physical things he was concerned about, and others were mental things that he was concerned about. With regard to paranoia, I don't know exactly what he meant by that word, except as he may have explained it 2 years later in the videos. And I literally don't remember what he said in the videos.
Well, let me remind you then. You have a discussion with him about a thought that as he was preparing for the mass killing, that maybe there had been a heightened sense of surveillance or law enforcement. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember now.
Talk to us about that.
He talked about wondering whether the police or law enforcement was surveilling or watching his apartment. And this is not specific in the notebook. These are other things he talked with me related to paranoia, or perhaps related to paranoia. Police cars parked near his apartment. Were they related to him or not? We talked about that, and if it wasn't in this segment, it'll be in a future segment of the video. He either thought or wished that the FBI or law enforcement had followed him to the theater, and we talked about his possibility as a wish that they would stop him. Things like that are what I remember.
How does that impact, if at all, your opinions regarding capacity?
It sounds like someone who is concerned about getting caught or getting stopped, and who in many ways, as he said, wants to be caught. There's a strong implication, I think, that he believes that he wants to be stopped from doing something wrong.
What about this idea, Doctor, he talks about a sense that he thinks that maybe law enforcement is more around him, he's seeing more law enforcement. What about the idea that maybe that's just entirely healthy, that if someone is planning to murder people, that they would naturally become more concerned about their environment?
Objection, leading.
He's asking about a specific idea, asking for his opinion about that specific idea. Overruled.
Go ahead, sir.
He did say at some point in one of the videos that we've already seen, something like, after all I was going to commit a crime, or after all I was planning to commit a crime. It doesn't seem unusual to me that a person who is planning, and particularly planning in some detail, might wonder, does anybody know, and do I need to worry about being surveilled? He did some things. He told me that he closed the curtains to his apartment, for example, to not be seen. Other things appear not to worry about being caught, at least after the fact. For example, when he left for the theater, he didn't bother to wipe his hard drive. He didn't bother, I don't believe at all, to use what are called proxy servers to cover tracks on the internet, things like that.
Can I just ask you about the first part of that? Because you do talk with him about that, about him leaving the hard drive in his apartment. That's in the apartment that has the incendiaries and explosives in it?
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about one part of the list of things you go through with him, and for me, it was the only part that I saw where he said, I don't want to answer that. And that was, you have a specific question for him about his genitals. Is there some significance to that line of inquiry and to the responses?
The line of inquiry is simply to be thorough. It was part of the list of things he was concerned about, some of which indicated something very likely mentally wrong. And it's certainly not unusual for people to talk, to not want to talk about their genitals, or to not want to talk about fantasies about their genitals or fantasies about sexual things.
Okay. There is some discussion that you have with him about shadows. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Why was it important to talk about shadows?
As he described them to me, I was very curious as to whether the shadows, what level, if any, of mental illness the seeing of shadows that apparently weren't there was. Was this a visual hallucination, which is a rather serious psychological or psychiatric condition? Doesn't define being schizophrenic. There are other ways to do it too, but it would have been pretty darn significant. At the other end of the spectrum, there are lots of ways to sort of see fleeting shadows or think you saw something out of the corner of your eye. We talked a lot about that, and I wanted to know a lot about it because I was very much interested in whether or how mentally ill he was, particularly at the times just before and around the shootings, but really any other time in his life as well.
Well, you talked to him about that, but did you also pay attention to, was it important to pay attention to how he had represented whatever it was he was seeing, both in the notebook and to other people in advance of the shooting?
It's important to know, if you can, what he saw or believed he saw and what it meant to him or how he responded to that. I'm aware that he described it in different ways to different people. To me, he described them as shadows. I'm not sure that's on track with what you asked, so maybe you
Let
could
me
ask.
break it down then. In the notebook, tell us, does he ever use the word shadows?
I don't believe so.
Calls them flickerings. Is that right?
Objection. That calls for speculation, Judge.
Oh, if you remember, he's asking about the contents of the notebook, right?
Yes, sir.
The question was about whether in the notebooks that's what they were called.
Correct,
So
but there's
those-
no indication we're talking about the same phenomenon.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. You can rephrase the question.
In the notebook, does the defendant make any reference to seeing shadows?
Not that I recall, no.
Does he make a reference to describing or seeing something else that he writes down that could be a visual phenomenon?
Yes.
What does he call it?
I believe he called it flickerings, but you've also suggested to me that it was flickerings. We can go to the notebook and see what he said.
Okay, and that's already in evidence, and we can certainly read that later.
Okay.
I want to ask you, is there any evidence in the record, either in the notes that were prepared, the reports, or your conversations with Dr. Fenton and Feinstein, that the defendant ever said he was seeing anything?
Dr. Fenton and Feinstein, the answer is no. And what were the other two places?
Just in their reports and notes and in your conversations with them.
Not in Dr. Fenton and Feinstein's, no. There's no indication of visual phenomena that I'm remembering, and I'm pretty certain of that.
Did you review Dr. Woodcock's notes, since he doesn't have a report, his notes from July 24th, 2012?
Objection, that's a mischaracterization of there being no report.
Sustain. Rephrase your question.
Yes, sir. Did you review, by the way, did you see a report from Dr. Woodcock from July of 2012?
Not from July of 2012, no.
Did you see notes from July of 2012?
Notes from his seeing the defendant, yes.
Did you see anything in the notes from Dr. Woodcock or hear anything in your conversations with Dr. Woodcock that said that the defendant was seeing shadows?
I'm fairly certain not shadows. I'm not sure as I sit here whether he describes some other visual phenomenon.
How about this? For everything you've reviewed, every mental health professional that you've spoken to, are you aware of any other time, other than what we just saw here, where the defendant described seeing head-juggling, axe-wielding, sword-wielding, shadow gun-using shadows?
I believe that was just to me in the interviews.
You tried to engage him on these several pages, 6 maybe pages of repeated why. Did you get an answer from him about that?
Not a particularly good answer. He sort of told me he didn't really know why he'd written it down. It had to do with the whys about the meaning of life, about the meaning of death, is what he said. That's the best I can do.
You asked him about voices.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
Because hearing voices, that is hearing voices that aren't coming from somebody, is a serious symptom in most instances, not always, but a serious symptom in most instances, and would lead one to think about serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, or about a break with reality, a psychosis of one sort or another.
Did you discover any evidence from any source that the defendant was hearing voices prior to July the 19th and 20th of 2012?
No.
In fact, does he just limit it to the events surrounding the incident of November 2012?
Yes, and I asked pretty thoroughly about that, and what he told me was it had to do with the period in which he literally had a psychotic break in November of 2012 when he'd been in jail for 4 or 5 months.
One other thing I failed to mention with the shadows, a question about that, was is there something you look for or expect to see that we would call surrounding symptoms of some sort of visual hallucination or seeing shadows, something like that?
In most situations, people are distressed when they see things that aren't there, or things that they believe aren't there, or odd things. Mr. Holmes didn't express to me distress either at the time or when he was describing it. One also would expect, if it were part, for example, of a psychosis, that is a break with reality beyond just seeing the shadows or seeing something. One would expect there would be other symptoms as well, and that the people around him would notice something wrong. I'm not aware of other symptoms or signs that people noticed or that he noticed at the time. He says he saw them in the lab. He doesn't say anything about any other symptoms or whether he stopped doing his work in the lab, things like that.
How about the fact that he says he can summon them?
I find that very unusual. It would be particularly unusual in a person who is schizophrenic, I believe, or is truly psychotic. There are other situations in which people occasionally, rarely, but not super rarely, see things in which they can be someone kind of playing with his own mind, perhaps someone reassuring himself. But it's an unusual thing, and it's also interesting to me that he's not distressed by it. It's not diagnostic. I don't want to overstate it. It's not diagnostic of anything in particular.
He mentions repeatedly, he uses the term mission to describe his planning and efforts at the theater. Does he ever use the phrase with you, a call for action?
I don't recall that he's ever used that with me. I don't believe I ever used it with him.
How about a call to action?
Same answer.
Oh, the meds. You talked to him at some length about the medications that he's on. And what I want to ask is, from after this November 2012 incident, 4 months after the shooting, he is treated and placed on some meds. Are those the same meds approximately that he was on when you saw him?
No, there's some overlap of the type of medication, but they're not the same and they're not for the same thing.
Are they the meds that he was on when he would have spoken with Drs. Juror and Metzner and the other psychologists in between?
Yes, by the time Dr. Juror and following people saw him, he was on the medication and pretty close to the same dose, as I understand it, the medication that he got in November and December of 2012 after he'd been in jail.
And to be clear, from the moment he's brought into the jail until whatever takes place in November of 2012, is he on any medications that you're aware of at all?
Not to my knowledge, and I looked very carefully for that.
You go
at least nothing psychiatric. Let me clarify, he might have gotten a decongestant or something.
or something for an infection or something like that.
I don't know.
Okay. In terms of your questions to him about things like retirement planning and the fact that he's looking for a house up until he decides to quit school, why is that important, if at all?
I noticed indications that he was going through some fairly, let me call it, normal activities, and two of them were investments. Pretty young to be thinking about retirement, but we hope people do. And they're looking for a house. I wanted to hear his description of those to see if they sounded realistic or if they didn't. I wanted also to see how late those thoughts, which turned out to be fairly realistic as far as him describing me, how late those lasted as we're moving toward July 1920. And as you pointed out, both the looking for the house, he says, stopped around the time he stopped school, and the checking on his IRA and his stocks probably stopped before that. I really don't know when the last time he looked at the Wall Street Journal was.
We saw you speak with him at some length about his contacts with Drs. Fenton and Feinstein. And there is a discussion where you ask him about information he has told them versus information he has withheld from them. Tell us what significance you place on that conversation and why.
I'm very interested in what went on by the only mental health professionals who saw him within a few months of the shootings. And that's Ms. Roth, the social worker, and then Drs. Fenton and Feinstein. We know what Drs. Fenton and Feinstein wrote down in their record and what they told me in the conversations. I wanted to hear his side of it. and to hear what his experience was with it. It was interesting to me that when he saw them, he was, as they inferred, withholding some things, not talking about some things. It sounds as if he was cautious about not getting too close to them, not forming the doctor-patient relationship, the rapport. He didn't want to be locked up. And there's an interesting context in this that I think is significant, and that's the juxtaposition of his not sharing things with them with his concept that a lie of omission, that is, not telling someone something, is not really a lie to him. A lie is telling an untruth.
Judge, may we approach?
Yes.
I object.
Oh,
Thank you for your patience, folks. All right, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may. I'll sustain the objection, but Mr. Brockler may proceed as we discuss at the bench.
Doctor, I cannot find the exact line in there, but this is what I want to do. A couple things. One, no matter what question I'm asking you, I want to be clear. I will never, ever ask you
Judge,
to...
I'm just going to object to this question. May we approach?
No, I'll sustain it. You can rephrase the question.
We don't need Mr. Brockler's explanation. We just need the question.
I understand. I didn't need the explanation there either. Sustained. You can ask a
Thank you.
different question.
The fact that the defendant tells you that he chooses to keep certain information from Drs. Fenton and Feinstein, does that fact have an impact on your assessment of his capacity to know right from wrong based on societal standards of morality?
Yes, it has an impact.
Okay. There's a discussion that you have with him also about being remembered and the significance of that to him. Is that right?
Yes.
Why did you ask about that, and what impact does it have for us here?
One reason is thoroughness. Another is that in a lot of situations similar to this, being remembered is a significant part of the person's motivation or thought about what will happen. It has to do with whether or not he believes that there will be people to remember him in the future. It has to do with the way he is thinking about his acts, or the way he looks, or the way he's preparing, the way he's thinking about those things as they might be viewed by other people, and how those acts, and he might be viewed by other people. I don't mean to skirt the question, but those have to do with the way he's thinking at the time.
Now you go into another set of questions where you ask him about things like a Squarespace website and New York Times search on how to post things on the New York Times. Why?
In part because they're simply in the record, and I want as much expansion as I can get on the things that I found in the record, whether the notebook or somewhere else. I would like to know what I can about, once again, the process of his thinking. Does it make sense? Does it have to do with crazy thinking, or does it have to do with things that lots of folks would like, such as to be in the New York Times? That's the way I'm thinking about it right now. I don't know if I'm addressing your question or not.
Well, let me ask you then, does it seem like rational conduct for someone that was preparing to do what he was doing?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
It's rational in the sense that lots of people do it, and lots of people want to be in the New York Times or on Facebook or something like that. It doesn't tell me that the mere fact that he wants to be remembered doesn't tell me for certain whether he's being rational in that process. But it's not an illogical process in my view.
When you're assessing the defendant's capacity both to form the intent to murder after deliberation and to act knowingly, as well as to assess his capacity to know right from wrong based on societal standards of morality, are you also going through this process assessing whether his thinking and his conduct and decision-making are rational?
I'm not sure I do it that specifically as you just described, but it's always what I'm thinking about in general.
In this last segment, did you find evidence of rational thinking by the defendant?
Yes.
How much?
a great deal. The considerable majority of what he said as he remembered it from 2 years later.
One last thing. You go through with him a discussion of something that he drew in the notebook, and it was a picture I think you both described as a window with some flames in it. Your Honor, with the court's permission, could I publish that just so the jury knows what we're talking about? Page 54, I think, of the notebook with the court's permission.
You may.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, ma'am. Was this the picture that you were speaking about with the defendant?
Yes.
Now, a lot of your questions had to deal with whether or not there was some, I think the word you used was personalization between him and this drawing. Why did you ask about that?
I was curious about the picture. Psychiatrists are always curious about pictures and how they're interpreted. Maybe it's sort of a Rorschach throwback. But I had a particular thought in my mind when I first looked at the picture. I wanted to know what his thought was when he drew the picture and when he looked at it later. As you recall, we talked about the idea that it's flames. We talked about the idea that it might be someone coming into a window. There is something that I thought about later that I did not bring up in the video, and I'm happy to mention that if you like.
What was that?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
How about this? Doctor, is there anything about the answers that the defendant gave you or your exploration of this picture with him that would suggest that this isn't someone trying to come out of a burning window?
It doesn't sound like, to use your word, someone coming out of a burning window. I think that our conversation reflects some version of flames, and my thought, and it doesn't have to be his thought, was that something was trying to get into the burning window. But in terms of what that means, that would be speculation.
Do you have any idea whether he's drawing a picture of his apartment?
Objection calls for speculation. And it's contradicted by the testimony of the video, in the video.
Sustained.
Doctor, I want to ask you, based on everything we saw in that segment, any change of opinion on the defendant's capacity to know right from wrong based on societal standards of morality, based on what you took in from this video? And ma'am, you can take that down, thank you.
My opinion's the same, and once again, I saw this before I rendered those opinions, and they helped support those opinions.
Any change on the capacity to form the intent to murder after deliberation and to act knowingly with his other alleged criminal conduct?
No change.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to try to do two of these at once with you. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 1008, and there are two DVDs there, Doctor, and then People's Exhibit 1009, same thing, two DVDs. We've done this now a few times. I want to ask you about 1008. There's a copy of a DVD with the seal of our office on it. Did you review that one in detail to make sure that within the confines of the court's orders that it is a fair and accurate representation of this next segment of your assessment of the defendant?
Several days ago, yes.
Okay. The other disc that's on there, did you review that in parts to make sure that it was consistent with the one you watched in detail, but perhaps maybe some better sound?
Did not review the DVD in detail, but checked the times, beginning and end, the actual length, and determined that it's me on the video and the content is the same, except for hopefully better sound.
Same questions as regards 1009. The one with the seal, the DVD with the seal, is that the one that you reviewed in detail?
Yes.
Consistent with the court's orders, is that one a fair and accurate recording of the assessment/interview you had with the defendant on the subsequent session?
Yes, it's a good representation.
The other DVD, 1009, that doesn't have the seal. Same questions as before. Did you take a look at the times on that to ensure that it seems like it's the exact same version of the one you watched in detail, just with hopefully better sound?
Yes, I did, and as you know, I initialed the disc when I checked that out.
Your Honor, I'm going to move for the admission of People's Exhibits 1008 and 1009 into evidence, and the 2 DVDs with our seals on them as just trial exhibits.
All right, is there any objection to P-TR-1008 and P-TR-1009, Mr. King?
Judge, I have no objection, no further objection to either, and I would challenge Mr. Brockler to play both videos at the same time.
Let's do it. I think, Your Honor, can we play them back to back? I think everyone wants to see it twice.
No. All right, both are admitted without any additional objection and based on my prior rulings, and both may be published, but only one at a time. So, Mr. Brockler, do you want to start with P-TR-1008?
I would, Your Honor, with one last question for the doctor. The period of time, do you recall, Doctor, is this the August 1st, 2014 PM session? That was the AM session?
The next one would be the August 1st, 2014 afternoon session, yes.
Picks up right after the lunch we heard you talk about on this last one?
Correct.
Thank you. Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Brockler, how long is this one?
This one is 27 hours. No, I'm kidding. What did you say? 2 hours and 11 minutes, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's play about 20 minutes worth of it, and then we'll stop right around 12, and we'll take our lunch break.
Yes, sir.
Yes, step down, sir.
Yeah, you may step down, Doctor. Thank you. All right, I'm going to dim the lights again.
All right. All right. Did you have a lunch?
Yep, that was tasty.
What would you have for lunch?
Oh, like chili and peppers and onions and chicken.
Sounds good. That sounds good. Chili pretty hot or not pretty?
No, it wasn't that spicy.
Okay. Okay. And you met with Dr. Gray also during the last couple of hours, right?
Right.
Okay. That's right. How's that testing going?
He's either almost done or he's got to come back.
Okay. Any big deal about it or any questions about it that I can answer for you?
Nope.
Okay. All righty. Yesterday, you were talking about your view of what happens after you die. Do you remember the phrase that you used?
Dreamless sleep.
Dreamless sleep, right. Does what you do while you're alive have any effect on what happens after you die?
I would say no.
I was almost a firm yes. Is there any exception to that or possibility of something different or no?
No.
Okay. So the things like having the worth of 13 rather than 1, those help you when you're alive.
Disappear, I guess, when you're dead.
Disappear. I'm curious if someone were to kill you or murder you, would they get 13 or would they get 1?
I'd say 1.
Okay. You think there's any chance of that?
Yes.
And what would be the way that might happen?
If they give me the death penalty.
Okay. And that would be purposely killing you as contrasted with accidentally killing you.
Right.
And so somebody would get 1.
Yes.
Who would that person be?
It's difficult to tell. They kind of do that on purpose, too. So I guess it could be the person who makes the lethal injection concoction, or whoever presses the button, or you could even go with the jury.
one person kills a person, how is the value divided? Or is it divided?
I think it's still just one. One goes to each person.
Okay. We're kind of talking about the possibility of your death or your possibility of being executed.
All right.
What are your feelings about that right now?
Well, since I've been in jail, it hasn't looked that bad. It hasn't looked that bad of a possibility.
Since you've been in jail, did you feel differently about it before you came to jail?
Yeah, I thought it would be worse than getting prison in life, but now I kind of equate them as equal.
Can you tell me a little more about the way you see them as equal, or one not particularly worse than the other?
Well, since all the freedoms are taken away when you're in jail and in prison, it's kind of not a fulfilling life.
Okay. I guess nobody knows right now, but informally, what do you think the chances are of you getting the death penalty?
I don't know. I haven't predicted it.
Right now, thinking about it, not casting anything in stone, do you think you would fight it, or ask the lawyers not to fight it? Or?
I would ask them to fight it just because my family still supports me.
Sounds like you think your family might have some feelings about that.
Right. I think it would matter if I died to them.
Tell me how they might feel. What they might feel.
Very sad.
Anything? Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, they would miss me.
How about your sister? She's part of the family. Is she the same as your parents?
Same thing, yeah.
Okay. I neglected to ask you this morning, we were talking about the symptoms that you saw in yourself and the possible diagnoses that you saw. Do you know what anybody has diagnosed you with now?
No, I can only speculate from the drugs they've given me.
Okay. So no doctor has said, here's what I think you have?
Correct.
Okay. What do you infer from the drugs?
Well, I'm taking antipsychotics, so I think it's schizophrenia, and I'm taking antidepressants, so depression.
Okay. I'll share with you that those drugs are sometimes used for other conditions too.
Okay.
But those are two conditions that they're used for. The Lexapro is most often used to help depression. And Risperdal is an antipsychotic. It's a non-specific antipsychotic. Kind of doesn't matter what the diagnosis is.
Okay.
And once again, what's your understanding of what psychotic means?
Having beliefs that don't match up with reality.
Okay. Did we talk about Dr. Woodcock coming to see you in the jail?
No.
Do you remember him coming to see you in the jail?
Yeah, he was like the first one, I think.
What do you remember about his visit and what y'all talked about?
I don't remember anything at all. Okay.
Okay. Do you remember about when he came?
Maybe around a month at the start of my incarceration.
At the start?
Yeah.
You mean around a month after you were?
Around a month after, yeah.
Okay. How many times did you see him?
Either once or twice.
Y'all get along okay?
I was distrustful of psychiatrists at the time.
Distrustful of psychiatrists specifically, or distrustful of anybody that came to see you, or Guess you didn't know who he was.
Psychiatrist.
Okay.
They told me who he was.
Was anybody with him when he came to see you?
Oh, I don't remember.
I guess what I'm asking, and you may not remember, is did anyone introduce you to him and tell you who he was?
Someone told me Dr. Woodcock is going to come evaluate you or speak with you.
Do you remember who told you?
I believe it's one of my lawyers.
One of your lawyers told you. Did they also tell you that he was there at their behest?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Okay. What I'd like to do for a little while this afternoon is kind of go through the chronology of the mission and what happened afterward. You've shared an awful lot about it already. I'd kind of like to go through it stepwise and pick up what I might have left out. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. We talked about the weeks and months leading up. What do you remember in terms of how you felt, what you were perceiving, how you were thinking when you were getting ready to go over to the theater for that last time to do the shooting?
How I felt that night.
Yeah, you're loading the car, you're getting stuff ready. What's going through your mind?
Just to get it done, basically.
Okay. Any other thoughts or fantasies or feelings going through your mind?
No fantasies or anything.
Any thoughts about how it was going to go?
No, just basically just do it.
You'd never done it before.
Right.
And although you had checked out some things, you'd never rehearsed the whole thing. Any anxiety about whether it would come off okay? And what you wanted to have happen?
No, I wasn't very nervous. I was prepared.
Okay. At that time, did you have any doubt that you would end up killing a lot of people?
No.
Okay. Tell me about the drive over.
Well, it was somewhat dangerous because I put tinted windows, like tinted window film on my windows so that I could gear up inside the car, but it doesn't let much light in, so it's hard to drive in the dark.
You weren't geared up when you drove over, but the windows were tinted so that you could get geared up inside the car, is that right?
Correct. I had only ballistic pants on before I drove over.
Okay. Was the windshield tinted too?
The windshield, I put up a sunscreen.
For the drive over?
Well, it didn't matter for the drive over if it was tinted or not.
If someone had looked in the window of the car at a stoplight, would they have been able to see it?
No, because it's dark.
Okay.
And it would look normal because I wasn't wearing all this gear and stuff.
Where was the gear stored? In the
Just
trunk?
in the trunk.
Any of it in the back seat?
I believe I had the back seat down, so it was just trunk to the back seat.
Okay. And what kind of car was that at that time?
Hyundai Tiburon. It's a coupe.
Oh, so that was the same Tiburon that you bought many years earlier?
Correct.
Okay. And your folks helped you buy it, right?
Yeah, they paid the majority of it.
They paid, as I recall, $7,000 and
I paid it $1,000. Okay.
the car was paid for?
Yep.
Okay. So you drive over. A little difficult to drive over. Tell me more about the drive and parking and stuff like that.
Well, the drive over went smoothly. I parked in the back, right across from the Theater 9 emergency exit. So it would be straight away going in there.
Which you had cased before?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
previously purchased the ticket to the theater online. So I walked in and I showed the guy my phone, but they have a little kiosk thing where you're supposed to enter the number. So he sent me to that, and I entered the number on the kiosk and it gave the ticket.
Any hitches there? Any problems there?
No.
The record indicates that your phone was scanned 3 times. Does that make sense?
I bought in 3 tickets.
Okay. Any particular reason you bought 3 tickets?
I was trying to get into Theater 9, and the tickets I bought were Theater 8. So I bought multiple tickets over different days to try and get the ticket to Theater 9.
And one of them did come up Theater 9.
No, they were all Theater 8. So I went to the concession stand, which was on the Theater 9 side, and then went to Theater 9.
Okay. So you just mostly, nobody had to check that, or nobody checked which theater you were going to?
Once you do the check at the front to see if you have a ticket, then they tell you where it is and you can go there. But I went to the concession stand.
Okay. Did you buy anything at the concession stand?
No.
Anything else about going in that comes to mind?
No, not really.
You mentioned earlier that you thought maybe the FBI would stop you from going in.
Yeah, once I geared up and was about to leave my car, I thought they would stop me there.
Oh, later when you actually geared up,
Right.
not when you were going through the front.
Right.
Okay, thank you. So you go in the theater, what's it like? What are you seeing and hearing as you go in the theater?
I just went to the very front and sat down in one of the chairs and then pulled out my phone to make it look like I had a phone call.
I'm sorry.
Pulled out my phone to make it look like I had a phone call.
Okay.
And then went out the exit for that reason.
As if you're going outside to a quiet place to...
To speak on the phone.
Okay. What was on the screen when you went in?
I didn't see. I'd imagine just previews.
Do you recall specifically that there was something on the screen, but you just don't...
There was advertisements playing.
Okay. Pretty quickly after you got to the front, you did the phone ruse and went out, or did you wait a little while?
It was pretty quick, maybe like a minute.
What else did you see in the theater when you first went in?
Well, it's just an aisleway.
I'm sorry?
It's just an aisleway to the stands. And I looked back in the stands and saw that they were all full.
Okay. So you go out through some sort of exit corridor to the outside exit door, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then what happened?
Then I went to put the stuff on and get all the weapons ready.
Tell me about that process. What did you do, or how did that work?
Well, I previously loaded all the magazines into the weapons to have them ready to fire. I just put on the clothes, the kind of arm guard, the coat with the ballistic proof.
Did you do all that in the car, or did you do it outside the car?
In the car.
Must have been pretty cramped.
Yes, it took a little bit.
Okay. Any particular thoughts, preparations, getting ready, psyching yourself up, anything like that?
I put my music on my headphones, on my wireless headphones.
Okay. The music was from an iPod or through your phone, or?
An iPod.
Okay. Tell me about the music. What music did you choose?
Just electronic music, random electronic music.
No particular artist that you remember?
Right, it was just dream about music.
Was it something that you had pre-recorded or pre-done, or was it over Pandora? Or
It's something I'd saved as like an MP3 file.
okay. So you put that on after you had suited up, or before?
Oh, in the middle.
Okay. The music, I take it, was through earbuds?
Yeah, they were wireless though.
Oh, really? Then what happened?
Then an employee came out to the dumpster and threw something away, but I had the tinted windows and the sun shade up, so they didn't see me. I heard them and everything.
But what, then
I heard them.
you heard them come out?
Okay.
What did you think about when they came out?
If they're going to interrupt the process or not. But they didn't. They just went back inside the theater after they threw the trash away.
If they had somehow interrupted the process, what would have happened?
I had a handgun in my passenger door side that I could have used.
Okay. Were you prepared to do that if necessary?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or feelings or sounds that you remember hearing, smells even? Anything sensing at all in your senses that you remember
No.
from that?
No.
Heart pumping, adrenaline racing, or no? Calm, keyed up, scared?
Calm and collected.
Calm and collected. Okay. At some point, you mailed the notebook, and that was it. At what point during the day did you mail the notebook?
The afternoon on Thursday.
In the afternoon. How did you mail it? Did you drop it into a letterbox, take it to the post office?
Dropped it in a post office box.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to turn the lights on. The record should reflect that the people have stopped playing P-TR-1008. Members of the jury, it's 12 o'clock, and so it's time for our lunch break. Before we take our lunch break, however, I want to remind you that the defendant's statements on this video recording have been admitted only for a limited purpose. You may consider the defendant's statements on this video recording only with respect to the issues that are raised by his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider them for any other purpose. Dr. Reed's statements on this video recording may only be considered for the limited purpose of allowing you to evaluate the reliability of his examination and to provide context to the statements made in the video recording by the defendant. You shall not consider any statements made by Dr. Reed on this video recording for the truth of their content or for any other purpose. All right, with that reminder, let's go ahead. Remember that my advisements related to your conduct Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Mr. Brockler, do you want to mark the unenhanced version of P-TR-1008 and 1009 as court trial exhibits 40 and 41, respectively? Yes, sir. All right, let's do that. So those will be marked as C-TR-40 and 41, respectively. And then I propose marking the note from Juror 901 from earlier today as Court Trial Exhibit 42, C-TR-42. Any objection to that? Nobody's saying they have an objection. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll mark it that way. Is there anything we need to talk about at this time on behalf of the people?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything on behalf of the defense?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, enjoy your lunch. Thank you.